All right, good afternoon. Welcome to our Humanities Festival and our Redstone Gallery Series. We are so pleased to have with us today the artists of the exhibitions that have been installed in the Music Building Gallery and the Goodstein Visual Art Building Gallery, Mariah Wilmer and Meghan Rowswell. We partner with the recital series that occurs throughout the year here at Casper College, known as the Redstone. So actually the full title is the Casper College Redstone Gallery and Recital Series. And we are fortunate to partner with the Humanities Festival for this endeavor. So this afternoon, we're going to hear from our two visual artists who collaborated for Spooky Action at a Distance, and then we will hear a performance. So I am going to first introduce Mariah Wilmer, who was born in Montana, and we are fortunate to have her here in Casper, teaching at Casper College and at the Nicolason, and engaged in many community projects. She has a bachelor's from the University of Montana and a master's in art history from the University of Denver. She's been here in Casper just under 10 years, and we have been very fortunate to view her work in multiple institutions, including Art 321 and Scarlo's Gallery downtown. But she also exhibits regionally, most recently a solo exhibition at the Paris Gibson Art Gallery. She has work in private collections around the world, and she was a recipient of the 2017 prestigious Tom West Award at the Nicolason Art Museum. And that is an honor bestowed upon an artist who has really given to our community. So we're quite fortunate to be able to have Mariah as our featured artist with Meghan Rowswell. Mariah, as you saw in the gallery, works with a lot of two-dimensional media and collages. Meghan Rowswell works with fiber sculptures and installations. She explores a wide range of textiles, and some of you may have attended her soft sculpture workshop earlier this week. She too exhibits in gallery spaces across the United States, and she too has an art history degree from Hastings College. One of the exciting things about Meghan's global experience is her time in Japan learning about ikebana, and she has been teaching workshops on the art of flower arranging across the country. We were fortunate that she was able to provide one also in Cheyenne while visiting here in Casper. So I'd like to now bring both artists to the stage to speak to their gallery exhibition. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks for coming. Thank you, Valerie and Casper College. I hope you guys are all enjoying the Humanities Fest. It's okay. I'm Mariah. This is Meghan. I am, as Valerie said, a Casper resident. I'm here for another few months, as our family will soon be moving, but I'm happy to present here one more time. Quantum entanglement is a pretty big topic, and actually it was Meghan who first introduced me to the topic. We had met online a few years ago. Was it 3 years ago? Something like that, while she was living in Japan. And she sent me an email. Her mother-in-law had connected the dots. She sent an article about a show I did, and we formed a friendship online, and we wrote a few letters back and forth, and I think from that point on, we just kind of were looking for something to work on collaboratively. And eventually, she had heard a podcast on quantum entanglement and suggested it to me, and I was like, okay, I'm not a scientist, I'm an artist. But I listened to the podcast on a walk one night in the summer, and I was hooked. It is so fascinating. Basically, the phenomenon of quantum entanglement is two particles are generated and they cannot be described independently of each other, even across great distances. So even though they are singular objects, they cannot be understood as separate entities. Einstein wrote about this theory. He first identified it. He didn't actually name it. He called it spooky action at a distance in a 1935 paper. And so that's where we got the title for our show. And we decided to kind of work together but separately, kind of playing with this theme of two things independent yet somehow entangled. And we also applied that to our show. I hope you have seen the show that is in the gallery here, but there's also another part of this show over in the art building in the Goodstein Gallery. So hopefully you can get a chance to see both of those, because neither show can be described independently. You have to see it all together. My portion of this show is focused on drawings. So as I began to research quantum entanglement, and I would say I spent a good 6 months just trying to wrap my mind around the idea of quantum entanglement, I kept struggling because I work visually. I would read about it, but I needed to see it. And I kept seeing drawings of particles, and it just didn't quite sink in for me. And then I found this ridiculous YouTube video of a guy who was wearing like a blue suit and spinning upside down, and I was like, that's it. I need to visualize it as a human. Somehow the fantasy of that application of two particles being actually humans, that really took my mind in a direction that I could work with. And so around this time, I'd been kind of collecting different images to work from, because I was hoping to work from vintage photography, and once I knew I was going to do something involving humans. And I stumbled upon like vintage circus performers, and I started to double the images of the circus performers, which, have you all had a chance to look at it? Okay, so it's a pretty difficult process to do a double image. So I did two different things to achieve this. The first thing that I did was I would sketch, and you can see some of my initial sketches out in front of the gallery out here, and it's just a single image of a person. And what I would do on the more complicated ones is I would sketch it out, photocopy it, enlarge it, and then copy that so that I could have it be doubled, if that makes sense. And then a lot of them I was able to freehand, but there are a few of the images that were just very, very complicated, so I would enlarge my small image to make it easier for me to work on in the double process, because as you get one thing done, trying to flip it and then reverse it and make it connected in a way that is believable can be very challenging. There's one in particular in the gallery, Goodstein Gallery, I want you to look out for. It's a contortionist on a hoop, and she's got lots of stripes everywhere. I freehanded that one, and then I spent forever trying to get it mirrored perfectly. It was very challenging for me. But usually what I would do is draw directly onto the paper. And then I used actually a print paper, not a paper for pencil normally. So that is where you get that soft quality of my graphite on paper. And that softened graphite creates sort of that vintage, timeless photo feel. It's softer, it's not as crisp as the normal drawings that I do. And I would say that those two combinations really brought this topic into clearer focus for me as I thought about how we would apply the fantasy of quantum entanglement into something where it would involve people, although the reality, as Meghan will get into, is quite different. But this was how I was able to visualize a very complicated idea and make it something that I could understand with more clarity. But I'll let Meghan here take over and tell you how she approached this subject in a very different way.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Meghan Rowswell, and I am a fiber sculptor. So what I like to do is I like to take fabric, which is a two-dimensional object, and I like to make it three-dimensional, which can be very, very challenging and rewarding. I am also a military spouse, so that is how I ended up living in Japan. That's how Mariah and I connected, because we were about to move back to the States, and I had to kind of figure out how to be an artist in the United States again. So just to kind of show you guys a little background of what I do, and then I'll show you how I came to work with quantum entanglement. I started out in college by weaving microfiche and turning it into a lamp. Never do this. Microfiche is extremely flammable. This will go up in flames pretty easily. But then I moved into using wool blankets and crewel yarn to create sculptures that were very organic, very cellular, and very plant-based. And I also started experimenting with installation. And I will say, when I was in college going for an art history degree, my college did not have a fiber program, and they didn't have a very strong sculpture program either. So a lot of this was self-taught after I had left school. Then I went on to do an artist residency at the Art Farm in Nebraska, and from there my work started to take on more of a sci-fi quality. Am I pressing that? Or? Okay, so anyways, so it started taking on more of a sci-fi quality mixed with an installation work mixed with organic processes. So, and now we get to where I am today. I listened to the podcast and I thought of quantum entanglement, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is something that I need to explore. It's a continuation of my science fiction theme. And I started doing research and pumping out ideas about how to visualize this. So I did a 30 and 30 challenge, which is something Mariah also does. She draws every single day. And after I had done the research, I was getting stuck with how to actually visualize quantum entanglement, because it is so very small. It's happening on a particle level. And so through making something every single day, I was able to kind of work out a nice combination between the fiber and the particle aspects. So when I was researching quantum entanglement, particles they're like a cloud of energy. They don't really have a visual. They're so infinitesimally small. And that really, it felt freeing to me, because then I could do research into historical representations of elements, and then I could also I can make it up a little bit on my own for particles. So there was also another reference that I used called the Picture Book of Quantum Mechanics, which was really super fascinating. That's where the second drawing comes from. And it really fueled my desire to take quantum entanglement and express it in fabric. So these are study materials for the particles that I have in the gallery here in the music room. Did you see the spinning particles on motors? So these were the first works that I actually made for the show, and I wanted to show a physical particle, and then I wanted to have it distanced across the gallery or galaxy. There you go. And I wanted them to spin at the same time. So lots of new things I was working on in this piece. It's very difficult for me to make two of the same thing. So it was a very first I glue one packing peanut here, and then I glue one packing peanut here, and then I work back and forth between those two particles. And then I decided that it would have more impact if they were moving, because part of quantum entanglement is that the two particles have the same physical properties. And the way the physicists talk about this is they talk about it in terms of spin. And spin is essentially the defining physical property of a particle, which direction it is spinning. So I took motors, and I built, my husband built boxes because he's the carpenter. And so these particles are spinning across the gallery from each other. It was a lot of fun. And you can see from before, I used one of my study materials to make the particles. that's actually mattress foam, and I rug hooked yarn through it to create that texture. And those are blinds that I found on the side of the road. So kind of expresses them talking to each other from across the galaxy. Now, if you guys have been over to the Goodstein, this is in the glass cabinet as soon as you walk into, well, it's the art building, but you know, the gallery over there. The pink is to represent space. And when I was doing research for this project, I talked to a physicist who was like, yes, pink swirling space. And then I talked to an astrophysicist, and he was like, no, that is not how we think about space. And I was like, dang it. But I went with pink swirling space because I think it's a lot prettier. And then, so what I did is I created cubes out of stretchy nylon material that you would use for leggings, and then I cut them all up and inserted a wire armature into them to have that fabric create a shape. So those were a lot of fun. And then I stuffed them with swirling things to kind of represent the swirling properties of the particles. So if you go into the Goodstein, one of the practical applications of quantum entanglement is going to be quantum computing. Once we're able to stabilize the bond between two particles, it's going to make computing 1,000,000 times faster. Like, you can't even comprehend. It's kind of how our smartphones would be incomprehensible to people 200 years ago. So the beautiful thing when I was doing research about quantum computing and parametric down conversion, the practical aspects of what quantum entanglement will be used for, is I found the quantum computers. And what's beautiful about them is they actually look like chandeliers. And if you've ever been to a server farm, if you've ever looked at a really large computer, it's very boxy. It's like looking at a bunch of boxes inside a closet. But these don't look like that. And so one of my installations in the Goodstein Gallery is a fiber mock-up of what a quantum computer looks like. And you can kind of see the long green things. I was really taken by that material, and so I wanted to turn it into the wiring that would be used for the quantum computer. And they ended up looking like very flower-like and very kind of wedding cakey until I got it installed here at the gallery. So it was a lot of fun. Just playing with materials and colors and textures. Another thing that really drew me to quantum entanglement when I was doing my research was the graphing aspect of it. When I was talking to the physicist, I was really asking him, I was like, what are the visuals of physics? You know, we know so much about physics being like numbers, but I was really wondering, like, what colors are your graphs? How do you visualize the data that you guys are constantly looking at? And so I spent a lot of time looking at graphs of data about quantum entanglement. And so these are examples of a couple of those graphs. And these drawings were the starting place for the other installation that's in the Goodstein Gallery, where I had those two hoops on poles and I had the strings going everywhere. That's a 3D representation of what these graphs are showing. I kind of wanted to give it a little bit more physicality and use, commonly fiber elements. So the strings are actually fibers that you would weave with, and then the hoops are actual quilting hoops that you would buy, for hand quilting. So yeah. Anyways, you can see my work. I have a show coming up in Kansas City. It's about Fondle Friendly. It's about the human body, and yeah, that's the end of our. Who has questions? So, ta-da. Sorry.
All right, thank you, and we'll be around if you guys do have any questions.
We do.
We do.
And the Goodstein Gallery is located in the Visual Arts Building. It is immediately to the north of this building. So upon exiting these doors, you can go right across the street and check out the exhibition. The gallery is open and the lights are on, it's free, it's open to the public, so please do take a moment to visit with the works.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is there's been a real push for STEM education, and I'm always trying to push it to STEAM, and I see a real beautiful collaboration between science and art in your work. And do you think that that's a great way to advocate for the inclusion of arts and sciences together?
Do you want to?
Oh, yes. I think there's a lot of artists, at least the ones that I have come across, are really passionate about science and really interested in how to take science and make it more understandable to a broader public, or just to how to use science as a inspiration for what they do in their own practices. Yeah.
I would also add to that, my sister-in-law is a bioinformaticist, and she does a lot of graphing for her work, and she actually uses art in her graphs to make them more understandable and also just more visually pleasing for herself, to give her a better understanding as she moves forward. And I think that, she's top-tier scientist, but I think that trickle-down effect to even grade schoolers is certainly there. We both learned a tremendous amount by combining those two.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I went to study botany, and one of the reasons that I went to study botany was because of botanical illustrations. So, thinking about what are our children's early exposures to science, well, it's the illustrations in textbooks, right? Who makes those? So I think it's really quite important to interweave the two.
Mm-hmm. And Vicki asked how we met. We met online. You sent me an email.
Yeah.
After. Oh, go ahead.
My mother's she sent me my mother's really cute. She sends me newspaper clippings. So she sent me a newspaper clipping of Mariah's show at the Nick. And then I emailed Mariah because I was like, Mariah she's a stay-at-home mom with 2 young kids. I have a 5-year-old. I thought I couldn't quite get enough art in my life, so I was looking for advice and solace, I guess. and it has really been a wonderful relationship. So,
are there any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Arigato.